Hello and welcome to the first of two videos on the second coming of Christ as taught by Paul in 1 Thessalonians. And we're going to look at Paul's extended teaching on the second coming, which occurs in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 13 down to halfway through chapter 5. And in this passage, Paul gives his extended teaching about the second coming of Christ. He also makes brief reference to it in 1 Thessalonians 1:10, 3:13, 5:23, and again in a couple of places in 2 Thessalonians. And my particular interest in this passage as a translator is because the passage is remarkable for all the word plays it contains. They make it in a very real sense impossible to translate. So that's why there's a lot of benefit if we can look at it in the original Greek. Now, anyone watching this, if you don't know any Greek, you can still get quite a lot of benefit, I would hope, from this video. But if you want to get more benefit, an introductory course in Greek would help, and I've done a series of videos that are graded leading up, starting from 1 to 38. But if you don't have time to look through all of those, well, even the first one or two would be of benefit. But as I say, I hope you can get benefit from this anyway, because I will explain some things as I go, obviously not everything. But anyway, let's dig in. So 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 13, ou thelamen de humas agnoen edelphoi, periton koimamenon, hineme lupeste, kathos kai holoipoi, hoi me echantes elpida. Notice the two different words for not. We have ou and me. Both mean not. Ou is used with what's called indicative verbs, so that's normal verbs like I see, I come, he goes. Here, we do not want you to be ignorant, brothers. And me is used with other verbs. In this case, this one is subjunctive, which follows the hina, in order that not you may grieve, so that you won't grieve, so that you won't feel grief. As kathos kai, meaning working together to mean as. Normally it's just kathos, but kathos kai, which Paul uses several times in this letter, adds a little bit of emphasis. Hoi loipoi, the other ones, the remaining ones, here referring to the non-Christians. Hoi me, here's me again, who, going with a participle, the ones who don't have hope. So this is a characteristic word of the New Testament, hope. Okay, so going back to this word here, the ones who are asleep. This is a common euphemism, in other words, a nice way to talk about death, just like in English we say, he passed away, instead of the blunt, he's dead. And it evidently became the usual way to talk about the Christian dead. Another word for sleep will be used in the next chapter, which can also mean dead, but in addition, it means not alert. We should perhaps just say here that the use of this word has been taken by some to give the idea of soul sleep, that when you die your soul sleeps, so you're not aware of anything until the day of resurrection. But I think that's a wrong inference from this word. It's just a common euphemism, the common nice way of saying dead. And it was especially taken up by the Christians to talk about the Christian dead, because Christians didn't believe that death was the nasty thing anyway, that other people had to use nice words to hide behind. Paul is really saying well, death isn't such a terrible thing for us Christians, so this word is very appropriate to use.
Cut.
Adelphoi, brothers. Adding this makes the message a little more personal and affectionate. Paul actually puts in this word 21 times in 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. Now it says brothers, and modern versions add and sisters, but this kind of thing is strongly objected to by conservatives who don't like to see that sort of thing added into the Bible. The question is difficult because Paul wasn't meaning to exclude women, whereas in modern English, brothers is often taken to exclude females. But on the other hand, if you add and sisters, you're sort of pulling it out of its original cultural context, and the original cultural context was very male-oriented. We have to admit that. But on at least one occasion, Paul himself added an explicit reference to women to make it very clear that they were included. In 2 Corinthians 6:18, Paul quotes an Old Testament original, but which concludes by saying, "You shall be my sons," and Paul adds, "and daughters." So there Paul himself has added "and daughters" to his Old Testament original. So, holoipoi, the rest, or the others, meaning the non-Christians, and he'll use this term again in chapter 5, verse 6, but in the previous verse, verse 12, which we haven't looked at, he calls them tous exo, the ones outside. And again, just a little comment on this word elpida. The root form is elpis. Its Christian sense is slightly different to its normal use in English. It's a worthwhile exercise to try different translations. Those who have no prospects, those who have nothing to look forward to. I say that because the English word hope has fairly large, in its normal English usage, has a fairly large component of kind of cross your fingers and hope. I hope I pass my exams, I hope I don't get cancer. Whereas the Bible word elpis is a lot more positive, so that's why I prefer translations like expectation or prospect or something to look forward to. Okay, and just one other comment. Notice the similar sounds between these words and elpida, the L and the P especially. So these sound correspondences are part of the rhetorical style, and they sort of oil the wheels of Paul's argument, and this tends to be lost in translation. Okay, verse 14. Egar pistuamen hoti Jesus apithanen kai aneste, hutos kai hotheos, tus koimethentas, dia tu Jesu, axe sun auto. Okay, so what should we say about this? Here, notice the fronting of the object. Here's the verb and here's the object. So this ending here tells us that it is the object. Since we can't do that in English, it's sometimes confusing if we put this first. But that's just part of his style. Style in Greek was a lot more fluid, since the grammatical function is indicated by the ending here. But that also enables Paul to put together at the end the two phrases, dia tu Jesu, through Jesus, and sun auto. So here we have it, the ones who have gone to sleep or passed away through Jesus. In verse 16 he says hoi nekroi in Christo, the dead in Christ. It's a little more blunt, but here he's still using this euphemism, this nice way of saying it, the ones who are asleep. Through, now this is a very interesting choice of preposition here, the ones who have fallen asleep through Jesus. The Barclay Newman lexicon, which I have bound in the back of my Greek New Testament, is always my first place to check, and it gives, with the genitive as here, this is a genitive ending, so this is dia with the genitive. It has different meaning if it's with the accusative, but with genitive it means through, by means of, or with, during, throughout, through, among, or throughout. And with accusative it means because of, on account of, for the sake of. So here with the genitive, with seems to be the best English equivalent. Maybe there's an echo of for the sake of, but whatever way you look at it, it's quite a striking phrase. But note that it's sun, with, takes its place here. But the idea that when a Christian dies, he dies through Jesus. So I think perhaps the basic idea is that even when we go through death, Jesus is right with us, and we're totally in his hands all the way through. So here's another question here. We'll go with him in what direction? Well, it seems that Zechariah 14:5 is in Paul's mind, which would mean that he's saying Christ will come down from heaven and bring with him the souls of those who have already died. And with that you could compare 1 Thessalonians 3:13. Okay, 15. Tuto garhum en legamen en logo kuriu, hoti hemes, horizontes, hoi perilepomenoi, esten parusian tu kuriu, ume phthasomen tus koimethentas. Try saying the followed by phthasomen. It's an interesting little exercise for your tongue and lips. Okay, so here is this well-known word that's been borrowed into English, the parousia, and the N form indicates that it's the accusative form going with the preposition eis. So we, the ones alive, the still around ones, this is a participle, the still around ones, up to, eis means up to here, up to the coming, the arrival, the second coming of the Lord. We may, so this is a double negative, very emphatic, the two negative words put together. Remember we saw them up here, the u and the may. Well, here they are, they're put together emphatically. We will not precede or go before. The King James Version said prevent in the old sense, meaning go before. We will not get ahead of those who are asleep, those who are dead. And evidently the Thessalonians were worried that their dead friends or relatives wouldn't get there at all, they would miss out. But Paul is saying, no, they'll be there, actually ahead of us. We're definitely not going to get ahead of them, so they're actually going to be ahead of us. Hoti autos okurios in keliusmati in phone archangelu kai in salpigi theu katabesetai ap uranu kai hoenekroi in Christo anastesontai proton. Katabesetai, because he, so this is emphatic to use the pronoun here, put with this, the Lord, he the Lord, in or, and under Hebrew influence it could mean by the instrumentality of a command, in or by the sound, the voice or the sound, so in this case the voice of the archangel. This is where we get the word archangel. And in or by the trumpet of God. He will come down, this S here is characteristic of the future, from heaven, and the dead in Christ, they shall rise first. Some modern theologians try to say that heaven isn't really up there, but sort of everywhere, since we know that the world is a sphere, and up goes out from the earth in every direction. Others say it's one of the extra dimensions that some modern scientific theories talk about. But to understand the Bible properly, we have to step right out of our modern worldview into an ancient Near East view. Heaven is above, and the earth is down here. So Jesus comes down from heaven to earth. So, and here is an important word for resurrection. Ana stesontai. So, ana means up or again, and this part means stand. And this is rendered part by part into Latin as this, resurgent. And so this Latin word, resurgent, and the noun from this Latin word is resurrection. So that's where we get the word resurrection. It's a pure Latin word that we borrowed into English that was a close part-by-part translation of this Greek word, resurrection. The dead in Christ, before we had them dying through Christ, and now they are dead in Christ. Again, both words talking about the close union with Christ that is never broken, not even broken by death. And they will rise first. Verse 17, Epeta hemes horizontes hoi perilepomenoi, hamasun autois harpages sometha, in nephelais eis apantesin tu curio eis era, kai hutos pantotes sun curio es sometha. Hamasun is an emphatic form of sun. I suppose it would correspond to English to saying together with, but really it's a little bit emphatic form of saying with, and we could get it in English just by saying with a bit of emphasis. With them will be harpagesametha. Here the Latin version uses a word that's been borrowed into English as rapture. So that's why this is called the rapture. But the word actually means, perhaps the first approximation equivalent to it would be snatch. So it often means like a quick and violent action. But the word snatch is obviously quite a negative word. Often it's translated caught up, but you'll see that in a lot of the standard versions will be caught up in the clouds. But caught up has other meanings in English. We commonly use it to mean tangled up or busy with. I'm caught up with somebody else, or catch up with somebody as in a race. So I think the best translation is swept up, and at the end I'll give my translation, will be swept up in the clouds. We modern people have been taught to think of things in naturalistic ways with the supernatural excluded. This often distorts our understanding of the Bible. Here, for example, we think of clouds as a natural phenomenon which can be completely explained scientifically in naturalistic terms. So if you look up the word cloud in Wikipedia, it says a visible mass of minute liquid droplets. So that's the modern naturalistic viewpoint. But in the Bible, clouds frequently have divine significance, as many references show. For example, Exodus 13:21. And clouds can symbolize and show God's glory. And air, in the air, that too had a significance to them, because the air is the dwelling place of spirits and demons. So this is showing Jesus and God's mastery over all the demons which inhabit this area. Okay, and then we have, let's just look at this between en and ace. Normally en means in and ace means to, but here we'd have to translate it the other way around. We'll be swept up into the clouds to greet the Lord in the air. But the other possibility, so we have to know that these words in New Testament Greek aren't neatly watertight, don't have neat watertight meaning divisions, but they do kind of overlap a little bit. They're not used strictly. This is not like scientific language where words have strict, careful definitions that are always kept to. This is just ordinary language to be understood by ordinary people. I mean, who can understand scientific language anyway? But the other possibility is that this in could be Hebrew influenced, where the Hebrew word be, meaning in, often means by the agency of the clouds, so we'll be swept up by the clouds. Okay, so just a final comment on this verse. There's a widespread teaching in Christian circles about a secret rapture, but all that Paul is describing in these verses is pretty loud. Verse 18, hoste parakalete alelus en tois logois tutois. So here again is en as more like meaning by. So comfort one another by or with. First approximation in, but here we'd probably say with. With the words these. And parakalite is another link with the last section. It occurred in verse 10. Okay, so now we come to chapter 5. This chapter division is a bit unfortunate. Obviously, the chapter division was made much, much later, long after Paul wrote. It's a bit unfortunate in that Paul is continuing to talk about the Lord's return, even though another aspect of it, the time. Peride ton chronon kai ton kairon adelphoi uchrean ekete humin graphesthai. Concerning but, so this is but it always goes second in the sentence. So we'd have to say but concerning the times and the seasons is the common translation of these, as in the King James Bible. And some Christian teachers make a big thing of the difference between these two words. This is like period of time, and this is a special time or an opportune time. But again, the language of the New Testament is not scientifically precise. It's just an ordinary language, and so if there is a distinction between these words, it's not always maintained. And here, really just the two words are working together to mean time. And I think perhaps the best translation in English would be to just use the word time and perhaps add the adjective exact time. I think that's probably the force of it. Concerning the exact time, brothers, he says brothers again, not need you have for us to write. You don't need us to write about it. So this is a common phrase that Paul uses in these letters. He used it in chapter 1 verse 8, chapter 4 verse 9. You have a need, and in 4:12, but 4:12 is the only place where he's actually talking about material need. He was just talking about a need for instruction. Again, I'll just point out the sound. Notice the sound similarities between these words, chronon, kairon, and chrean. So the similarities in sounds of these three words again sort of oils the wheels of Paul's argument. And final comment. There are some English words that we get from words we've seen in here, in these verses. Philadelphia, chronology, graphic. So chronology, graphic, and Philadelphia, love of the brothers. So those are just English words that might help you to remember these Greek words. But we'll carry on. Autoi gar akribos oidate hote hemara kuriu hos kleptes in nukti utos erketai. So autoi is quite emphatic here, and we would translate it as, it's actually the third person strictly, but when it's used for the emphatic pronoun, it goes with whichever pronoun is here. And so in this case it's you yourselves, for you yourselves know well that the day of the Lord, as a thief in the night, like that, it comes. So we notice the chiasm here, thief in night, day of the Lord. So we have day of the Lord, thief in the night. It's a common biblical pattern. It's called chiasmus, where so there's A, B, B, A. Day and night are on the outside, and Lord and thief are on the inside. And then the verb is left to the end of the sentence. So Jesus compares his coming to a thief. It's quite a striking image to use, and probably the main point of it is to shatter complacent expectations about the day of the Lord, as we read in the book of Amos, for example, chapter 5, verse 18. But it's also, I think, partly motivated by the form that we have here. Kuriu and kleptes, both beginning with K, and then the contrast between day and night, because these are two keywords that he's using in this passage with a variety of different meanings, and we'll look at that a bit more as we get further on into this passage. Yeah, but day and night, very important words in this passage with several different meanings, and they echo and resonate throughout this whole passage. In part 2 video, we'll look at them some more.